Okay, you two, let's get after this, as Cuomo would say. Garagos, I'm going to start with you. What the hell is going on in California that a guy like Mr. Ritchie would be the only one of those 4 people punished in that whole scenario?
So the backstory to this is in LA County, there's been a scandal, if you will, for the last couple of years involving the giving of these permits and with the previous couple of sheriffs. So what they're doing here is, I think, kind of overreacting, because clearly he should be able to not only keep this, but I don't even think they could have taken it in the first place. There is no basis upon which to revoke it. There's no basis upon which to prosecute him based on the tape that I've seen. I will give this much to the DA, actually. Years ago, this would have been a case that would have been prosecuted. I've defended cases like this where people are standing on their own property, getting attacked, and will fire a gun, and they get prosecuted or arrested. So at least we're making some progress. I think that politically they were trying to err on the side of caution by taking his gun or his right to carry the gun, but that's outrageous, frankly.
Err on the side of caution. What drives me crazy about this is that this guy has been targeted 3 times since, what did I say, May? I think his first break-in. Yeah, the home was broken into in June and the car was broken into in May. This is the 3rd time that someone's come after him. And now if there's a 4th, and God, I hope there isn't, he now doesn't have that right. So Jesse, help me figure out the difference between all the different laws that are out there. There's stand your ground, right? There's, I think 27 states have that. There's the duty to retreat, and 13 states have that. And there's 10 states with the castle doctrine, and California is one of them. Help me navigate if I'm a viewer right now and I want to know, what am I allowed to do to these guys?
We'll put it this way. What Mr. Ritchie did under the law in California, he has the legal right to do. He has a right to protect himself and his family on his property, which is textbook example of what he did. Now, I do want to add what I think suspected happened here. I don't think his CCW permit was revoked because of the actions he took against those 2 armed assailants. What I think happened here is his license was revoked for something that happened subsequent to that. Because if you look at the law in California, your license can be revoked if, for example, you don't cooperate with police, if you don't hand over your firearm, if you didn't have your CCW card on you, if you interfered in the investigation in any way. Now, I know there's been reports out there that he had a confrontation with police, that he might have yelled at police. Even if that was the case, I don't think it should have been revoked. But there are grounds where I think that they might have been able to revoke it on that basis. So not the shooting itself, but his interaction with police afterwards. And again, if that's the case, I still don't think, in light of the circumstances, in light of the politics, and the light of the optics of the way this looks, the permit should have been removed. But I think that's what happened here.
But by the way, you know what's interesting here? What's interesting here, I don't even think he needs the CCW. He's on his own property. He can, under the code, under the penal code, he can defend his own property. You don't have to have a permit for keeping a gun on your own property. That's a misnomer, at least if the cops are doing it because of that.
You're right, but he just, you know what, Garagos? He just drove up to his property. He went through his gate. He drove into his driveway, and he's walking to it. So that gun, if it's on his property, would do no good for him in this circumstance. He needed it on his hip because those guys came to him, and he met them at where they came to him, which was his hip. So I hear you. He could still have the gun inside the house. It's the concealed carry that he lost. And I'm going to just dovetail on what Jesse said, because Ritchie actually himself admits to yelling at the officers and criticizing them for sloppy police work because they did not pick up casings near his home as evidence. He was worried about gun casings because he wants to know if at any point clearly they got off a shot, because the casings would show if they were his or the officers. But Garagos, weigh in on what Jesse just said. I mean, that would be really crappy if somebody decided to take it out on this guy who's got a baby at home, has been targeted 3 times, and does this, and then, you know, because he got angry, loses his concealed carry.
Well, you know, it would not be the first time that somebody was punished for contempt of cop. And that sounds like, under Jesse's theory, what happened. Remember that carrying it in his car or transporting it, you can still do that legally even without the CCW. You can also, depending on what the circumstances are, but the whole idea that they're going to punish him because they're not collecting the evidence or because he's got contempt of cop is unfortunately a story often told.
So, Jesse, weigh in on the whole issue of applying to get it back, because to me it kind of reeks of, oh, geez, the press is all up my butt on this one, and I need to do something here, again with the optics, right? What does it mean he can apply to get it back? What does that mean for him if he's had it taken away? Is it more difficult to get it back? Is this a matter of just paperwork and waiting? Tell me.
Well, I first will say that I think Richie's case is very different than anybody else because it's being amplified in the media like this show right here. And I think that will ultimately help him. The fact that the sheriff's office came forward with a statement talking about how they're working with him to reapply, I'm not surprised by that. Now, having said that, generally speaking, someone who has to reapply as opposed to first getting the license, I would imagine that would be easier. But in California, they have some of the strictest requirements to get a CCW. I believe it's 8 to 16 hours of training. There's a whole level of documentation. There's a background check. It's different than you see in other states. Now, I do believe, I don't think they're going to make him jump through all the loopholes, given all the different factors here. I imagine he's going to get his CCW back pretty quickly, but it doesn't take away the fact that it was removed in the first place, and we don't have a straight answer for why it was taken after he defended his family in light of these circumstances.
And his castle, Garagos, explain for someone who may not understand the castle doctrine and any nuances state to state, what you are and are not allowed to do under the castle doctrine if some, thugs like this come upon you.
So when you have what's called the curtilage, which is the surrounding area from your home, somebody kind of penetrates that barrier. And if they are threatening you with a deadly weapon, clearly that all of those elements are met, you do not have to put your weapon down. You do not have to kind of close the door, just call the police, which a lot of times people assume. You can defend yourself in your home. When you call it the castle doctrine, it comes from the old expression, my home is my castle, I can defend it. And if somebody crosses the curtilage, AKA moat, if you will, around my house, they do that at their own risk.
So in some states, I recall many years ago, there were nuances whereby if you were a homeowner and you were shooting at an intruder on your property, and again, that doesn't mean inside the house, it means outside the house, you could shoot in the back, someone who is retreating but is still on your property. Does that still exist?
Well, the one case I was telling you about that I defended many years ago, my client had shot to scare the people off, and the bullet ricocheted and then came up and hit the person right between the eyes and killed them. And she was prosecuted for murder. It was an involuntary manslaughter at best, but you do not have to retreat if there is a deadly weapon that is being used against you, meaning you don't have to go back in and do anything except defend yourself.
Yeah, and Jesse, I sometimes wonder if those get, changed by legislatures sort of season to season, almost with the political winds, Are there still states that just allow you to shoot them? Great, Wild Wild West, shoot them if they're on your property, or is it a little less sort of severe than that?
So there are states that are a lot more lax with the ability to use lethal force. I will say here, if this was a situation where these two people that came onto his property had knives or they weren't armed and he fired at them, I think it would be a different kind of scenario. But when you are dealing with states like Florida or Texas, it's a little bit different. I just want to add one thing here. There's been talk about, his frustrations with the police, completely understandable. And I was wondering, could he file a lawsuit? Think about his perspective. He keeps having intruders coming onto his property. Police and the city, they have an immunity to being sued for what they do. Unless he can show that they're blatantly violating the law or completely skirting their duties, he doesn't have much recourse here, which is unfortunate. Perhaps it requires a change in the law. Perhaps it requires taking a second look at what is happening in situations like this. But in terms of taking legal action against the police department for seemingly not doing enough to protect him and his family, I don't think he's got much here.
I'll tell you what, I saw this and I thought, that's what I wanted to do to the guys who broke into my car. And it was just my car and I wasn't in it at the time. But I had that anger and that violation. So, you know, multiply that by 1 billion. And that's what this guy was going through. Again, 5-month-old baby inside that house with his wife and the nanny. Hey, Mark Garagos and Jesse Weber, thank you so much for sort of getting me off the ledge, but also setting me straight. Appreciate it, guys. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.